I'm a 29-year-old guy, and my older brother Ryan, who's 32, has always been the golden boy of our family. Growing up, we were close, but there was always this underlying tension. Ryan has this knack for being the center of attention and somehow dodging accountability. Me? I've always been the responsible one, at least that's how I see it. About 6 months ago, Ryan borrowed my laptop. Not just any laptop, it was my $2,000 MacBook Pro that I'd saved up for and relied on for my freelance graphic design work. Ryan had some urgent work thing and needed it for just a few hours. I hesitated because, well, I need that laptop for everything. It's not just my work tool, it's my livelihood. But saying no to Ryan isn't easy. He has this way of making you feel like you're the bad guy if you don't help him out. So I handed it over, thinking he'd be careful. When I got it back, it was a disaster. The screen was cracked, the keyboard was sticky, and the thing wouldn't even power on. Ryan shrugged it off, calling it an unfortunate accident. Apparently he'd spilled coffee on it while working under pressure. He promised to replace it as soon as possible, but that's where the excuses began. At first, it was, I'm waiting for my next paycheck, then I've got some unexpected expenses right now. He'd toss in a casual, don't you trust your big brother? To deflect the conversation. Meanwhile, I was scrambling. Without my laptop, I had to turn down projects, borrow an old, barely functional computer from a friend, and figure out how to keep my clients happy. Every delay from Ryan put me deeper into a financial hole. I started avoiding family gatherings just to dodge the awkwardness of seeing him. But the problem with family is, no matter how much you try to avoid them, they always find a way to rope you back in. A couple of months ago, Ryan dropped a bombshell. He announced his engagement to Jessica, his girlfriend of 3 years. Don't get me wrong, Jessica's great. She's kind, organized, and probably the only reason Ryan's life isn't a complete mess. The family was over the moon. My mom was practically floating on air, planning the engagement party before Ryan even finished his announcement. At the engagement dinner, Ryan pulled me aside. With his usual overconfident grin, he said, "Hey, I need you to be my best man." The room was buzzing with excitement, and everyone was looking at us, waiting for me to say yes. I couldn't say no, not in that moment. So I mumbled something about needing time to think about it, but Ryan brushed it off like it was a done deal. Later that night, I cornered him privately. I told him straight up, I'll be your best man after you pay me back for the laptop. He laughed like I'd cracked a joke and said, "Why are you so hung up on this?" It's not like I broke it on purpose. That hit a nerve. It wasn't about whether it was on purpose, it was about the principle. I needed that laptop to work, and his carelessness had cost me more than just money. The next day, my mom called me, and the conversation somehow turned into a guilt trip. She said things like, "Ryan really looks up to you, and this wedding is bringing the family together. Don't ruin it over something so trivial." Trivial? Losing a major source of income didn't feel trivial to me, but she made it clear that saying no would break the family bond. It felt like everyone was expecting me to sacrifice yet again for Ryan's sake. A few days later, Jessica pulled me aside at another family gathering. She thanked me for agreeing to be the best man, saying how much it meant to Ryan. She looked so sincere, so hopeful, that I didn't have the heart to correct her. I nodded and smiled, but inside I was stewing. Ryan was off laughing with our cousins, completely unfazed by the whole situation. I started venting to friends, who were quick to point out that Ryan was taking advantage of me. One of them said, "If you don't stand up to him now, he'll just keep walking all over you." That stuck with me. It wasn't just about the laptop anymore. It was about a pattern that had been there all our lives, Ryan creating chaos and me cleaning up after him. Finally, I turned to Reddit. I posted about the situation, laying out all the details and asking for advice. Should I hold firm on getting repaid before agreeing to be the best man? Or should I let it go for the sake of family peace? The responses were mixed, but one thing was clear, I wasn't alone. Tons of people shared stories about family members who had taken advantage of them, and reading those stories made me feel less crazy. Now I'm stuck. On one hand, I want to keep the peace and make my family happy. On the other hand, I'm tired of being the one who always compromises. The laptop isn't just about money, it's about respect. Ryan's engagement has turned into this huge family celebration, but for me it's a constant reminder of how little he values what he's cost me. I don't know what to do next. Part of me wants to confront him again, but I know how that'll go. More excuses, more deflection, and probably another guilt trip from my mom. For now, I'm waiting to see what Reddit has to say. Maybe they'll help me figure out a way to deal with this mess without blowing up my family. Update 1. After posting my situation on Reddit, I received a flood of responses. Most people told me to stand firm and demand repayment before agreeing to anything further with the wedding. A few suggested compromises, but the overwhelming consensus was clear: Ryan needed to be held accountable. Armed with this support, I decided it was time to have a direct conversation with him. I called Ryan and told him we needed to talk. He came over the next evening, acting like everything was fine. We sat down in the living room, and I brought up the laptop again. I explained how much his promise to replace it meant and how his delays were making things difficult for me. Instead of taking responsibility, Ryan rolled his eyes and said I was being materialistic and unsupportive. He made it sound like I was sabotaging his big life event over something petty. Then he hit me with a solution. He offered to pay me back in $100 installments each month. I couldn't believe it. This from the guy who just posted pictures of his brand new designer watch on social media. I pointed out the watch, and he shrugged it off, saying it was on sale and practically a steal. That was the last straw. I told him I couldn't accept his plan. I needed the full amount to replace the laptop, not a trickle of payment stretched over more than a year. Ryan wasn't happy about that. He stormed out, and a couple of hours later I got a call from my mom. She wasn't yelling, but the disappointment in her voice was worse. She said Ryan told her I was making unreasonable demands and refusing to be his best man. She reminded me how much family meant and suggested I let it go. She added, Ryan's going through so much right now with the wedding. Can't you just give him some time? It was the same line Ryan had been using for months, and I was tired of hearing it. The next day, while scrolling through Instagram, I stumbled across something that made my blood boil. Ryan and Jessica had just returned from a weekend getaway at a luxury resort. The photos showed them lounging by the pool, sipping cocktails, and generally living it up. The captions were all about relaxing before the big day. Meanwhile, I was scraping by with an ancient borrowed laptop, trying to keep my clients happy. Later that week, there was a family dinner. Ryan showed up late, as usual, and immediately started cracking jokes like everything was fine. I wasn't in the mood. When he made a snarky comment about being broke after this wedding, I snapped. I brought up the laptop right there at the table. The room went silent. Ryan turned it into a spectacle, accusing me of trying to ruin his engagement and making everything about money. Our mom tried to calm things down, but it was too late. The argument spiraled out of control. Jessica stepped in, trying to play peacemaker. She said Ryan would pay me back after the wedding expenses were settled, but that wasn't good enough for me. I told them both I couldn't keep helping with the wedding planning until this was resolved. That didn't go over well. Jessica looked hurt, and Ryan acted like I'd just disowned him. Over the next few days, I talked to a few close friends and coworkers about the situation. Their opinions were divided. Some thought I was right to stand my ground, while others said I should suck it up for the sake of family peace. One friend suggested I post a poll on Reddit to see what the wider community thought. So I did. The poll asked, should I withdraw as best man until Ryan pays me back, or find a way to compromise? The results were overwhelmingly in favor of stepping back. The next morning, Ryan sent me a text. It started with an apology but quickly shifted to blaming his behavior on bad timing and wedding stress. He said he wished I'd been more understanding. That same afternoon, Jessica emailed me, pleading for me to reconsider for Ryan's sake. She said he was under immense pressure and that the last thing they needed was more drama. Her tone was polite but firm, like she was trying to guilt me into backing down. That night, I started looking into small claims court. Filing a case wasn't something I wanted to do, but I needed to know my options. I shared this update with Reddit, and the advice was clear: give Ryan one final deadline before escalating further. I haven't confronted him about this yet, but I know I need to. Time is running out, and I can't let this drag on forever. Part of me hopes he'll finally step up and take responsibility. The other part of me is bracing for another round of excuses. Either way, I'm ready to take the next step if I have to. This isn't just about the laptop anymore. It's about standing up for myself and making it clear that I won't be pushed around. Update 2. After deciding to give Ryan one last chance, I sent him a formal message. I told him I needed full repayment by the end of the month, no excuses. I explained that this wasn't about the wedding or anything personal. It was simply about him keeping his promise to replace the laptop he destroyed. The deadline was clear, and I thought it was reasonable, considering how long he'd had to figure this out. Ryan didn't take it well. He fired back almost immediately, accusing me of being petty and claiming I was ruining his wedding vibe. He made it sound like I was attacking him during the most important time of his life, even though I'd been holding back for months to avoid making waves. The message was full of dramatic phrases like "you're blowing this way out of proportion," and "I can't believe you're doing this to me right now." The next day, my parents called a family meeting. I should have seen it coming. They've always been the type to avoid confrontation at all costs, so this was their way of forcing a resolution. We all gathered at their house, and the tension was obvious from the start. Ryan sat across from me with his arms crossed, looking annoyed. Jessica was next to him, clearly trying to stay composed. Things escalated quickly. Ryan admitted that he never actually planned to pay me back in full. He said he thought I'd eventually move on and get over it. He even laughed a little, like it was no big deal. I could feel the frustration in the room shift as everyone realized how casually he'd been treating the whole situation. I explained how much his actions had impacted me, losing work, dealing with extra stress, and scrambling to replace something so essential to my job. When I finished, there was this heavy silence. It felt like everyone was processing just how selfish Ryan had been. Then Jessica jumped in. She said I was being unreasonable and making things harder for Ryan during an already stressful time. She went on about how weddings are expensive and that Ryan couldn't focus on repayment right now. It felt like she was trying to downplay what had happened, but I wasn't letting it slide. I pulled out my phone and showed everyone screenshots of Ryan's recent spending. The new watch, the luxury weekend getaway, the high-end wedding favors, it was all there. I didn't say much, just let the evidence speak for itself. My parents looked uncomfortable, and Jessica glanced at Ryan like she hadn't seen some of the purchases before. Still, my parents tried to mediate. They asked me to wait until after the wedding for repayment, saying it would give Ryan some breathing room. I told them I couldn't agree to that anymore. This wasn't just about money, it was about trust. I made it clear, no repayment, no best man role. That declaration sent Ryan into overdrive. Over the next few days, he started spreading his version of the story to anyone who would listen. He painted me as the villain, claiming I was sabotaging his wedding out of spite. Suddenly, extended family members were reaching out to me, asking why I couldn't just let this go. Some sided with Ryan, saying I should support him during this important time, while others stayed neutral but clearly wanted me to back down. It didn't stop there. Ryan's narrative made its way through our family's group chats, and I found myself defending my side of the story more than once. I turned back to Reddit for advice, updating everyone about the situation and asking how to handle this smear campaign without burning bridges entirely. The responses were a mix of support and suggestions. One person recommended bringing in a neutral mediator, someone both Ryan and I trusted, to help resolve things. I thought it was a solid idea, so I reached out to a mutual friend who's good at diffusing conflicts. They agreed to help, but when they contacted Ryan, he wasn't happy. He accused me of betraying him by dragging someone else into our business. It was clear he wasn't interested in resolving anything unless it was completely on his terms. Then, Ryan dropped the ultimate bombshell. He told me if I didn't agree to be his best man and stop pushing for repayment, I shouldn't bother attending the wedding at all. It was an ultimatum designed to back me into a corner. I hadn't expected him to go that far, and it left me wondering if there was any chance of salvaging our relationship. For now, I'm at a crossroads. The wedding is coming up fast, and it's clear Ryan isn't going to budge. I'm starting to think my only option might be taking this to small claims court, even if it means creating more tension within the family. Reddit has been a lifeline through all of this, and their advice has kept me grounded. Whatever happens next, I know one thing for sure. I'm not backing down. This has gone beyond just a laptop. It's about standing up for what's right. Update 3. After Ryan issued his ultimatum, I didn't reply right away. I decided to sit with it and turn to Reddit for advice. The responses flooded in, with the majority telling me not to cave. People emphasized that standing firm on my boundaries wasn't just about the laptop. It was about setting a precedent for how Ryan treated me and others in the future. As I was going through the replies, Ryan struck again, this time with a group text to our immediate family. He accused me of being jealous of his engagement and claimed I was trying to ruin his happiness. It was a lot of over-the-top statements meant to paint me as the villain. I stayed silent in the group chat and started drafting a calm, detailed response to send privately. In my message, I explained how this wasn't about the wedding, but about his refusal to take responsibility for something he had promised to fix. A day later, Jessica called me directly. She started by acknowledging that Ryan isn't perfect and admitted he could have handled things better. Then she shifted to asking me to reconsider my stance, saying Ryan was under immense pressure with the wedding coming up. She tried to frame it as if I was adding unnecessary stress to an already overwhelming situation. I pointed out that this wasn't about wedding stress. It was about a pattern of behavior that Ryan had been repeating for years. The call ended on a sour note when Jessica accused me of being emotionally manipulative. That word threw me off. I hadn't expected her to go there, especially since I thought I had laid everything out pretty rationally. After the call, I realized things were only getting messier. That weekend, my parents invited me over to talk things through again. They seemed more subdued this time and admitted that Ryan had a history of borrowing things and not repaying or returning them. I could tell they were torn. On one hand, they understood where I was coming from, but on the other, they didn't want to disrupt the family dynamic. My dad even said, "This wedding is supposed to bring everyone together, not tear us apart." Meanwhile, extended family members started chiming in. Some reached out privately to tell me they understood my perspective and thought Ryan was being unreasonable. Others took a more neutral stance, saying they didn't want to get involved. But there were also those who sided with Ryan, arguing that weddings were stressful enough without adding family drama into the mix. It was exhausting having to explain myself over and over. I decided to make a clear choice. I texted Ryan, telling him I would still attend the wedding, but I was stepping down as his best man. I wasn't comfortable standing by his side when he hadn't fulfilled his promise. His response came almost immediately, one word: unbelievable. That was it. After that, I focused on work to distract myself from the drama. For a few days, things seemed to quiet down. Then, out of nowhere, a friend sent me screenshots from a private group chat that Ryan was in with some mutual acquaintances. In the messages, Ryan was mocking me, calling me selfish and petty, and joking about how I couldn't let go of one little laptop. It hurt, not because of the insults, but because he was trying to turn people against me instead of addressing the actual issue. I updated Reddit with the screenshots, and the response was immediate and fiery. People were outraged on my behalf, with some users even suggesting I cut ties with Ryan entirely. Others encouraged me to take legal action, saying it was the only way to hold him accountable since he clearly wasn't going to take this seriously on his own. That advice stuck with me. I decided to file a small claims court case against Ryan for the laptop repayment. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I felt like I had no other option left. Ryan had pushed this to the point where it was no longer just about the money, it was about principle. I gathered all the evidence I had, receipts, repair estimates, the text conversations, and even the screenshots of his extravagant spending. Filing the case was straightforward, but now I'm waiting for the next steps. I know this is going to escalate things even further with my family, but at this point, I feel like I've tried everything else. I updated Reddit again, thanking everyone for their advice and support throughout this mess. Some users pointed out that taking legal action might be the only way to get through to Ryan, and I'm starting to think they're right. The court date hasn't been set yet, but I'm bracing for the fallout. I know Ryan isn't going to take this well, and I'm sure there will be more drama leading up to the wedding. For now, I'm just focusing on staying calm and preparing for whatever comes next. This isn't how I wanted things to go, but it feels like the only update for. After filing the small claims case, things escalated fast. Ryan was furious when he got the notice. The family backlash came almost immediately. My mom called, asking how I could do something so drastic over a little mistake. Ryan was telling anyone who'd listen that I was trying to destroy the family over something so small. It became the main topic in our extended family's group chat, with people chiming in from all sides. When someone asked why Ryan didn't just pay me back if it was so small, his response was full of excuses. He claimed he was strapped for cash because of wedding expenses and that I was being unreasonable. I pointed out to the family that if it was such a small amount, he should have paid me months ago instead of letting it drag on. A few days later, I got a long email from Jessica. She accused me of escalating unnecessarily and putting undue stress on both of them during an already hectic time. She went on about how the wedding was supposed to be a joyful occasion for the family, and I was ruining it by dragging Ryan to court. I took my time drafting a response, making sure to keep it calm and professional. I explained that I wouldn't have filed the case if Ryan had simply kept his promise. The email exchange ended there, with no resolution. Reactions from my friends were mixed. Some were proud of me for standing up for myself, saying it was long overdue. Others were worried that this might cause permanent damage to my relationship with Ryan and the rest of the family. On Reddit, people shared their own experiences with small claims cases. Many of them were successful, which gave me confidence that I was making the right choice. One user even outlined what to expect during the court process, which was helpful. A week before the wedding, there was a pre-wedding family dinner. Ryan completely ignored me the entire time. He didn't make eye contact or acknowledge me, which made things awkward for everyone else. A couple of cousins asked me privately if things were really that bad between us. I didn't go into detail, just said that I was handling it. My parents tried one last time to mediate. They pulled me aside after the dinner and urged me to drop the case. My dad said, "This is tearing the family apart. Can't you just let it go for the sake of peace?" I told them Ryan had plenty of chances to resolve this privately, but he chose to ignore me. I wasn't backing down now. When the wedding day arrived, I went as a guest. I had no intention of making a scene, but the tension was palpable. Ryan and Jessica barely acknowledged me, and I could see some family members whispering and glancing my way. The ceremony itself was beautiful, but the reception took a turn. During Ryan's toast, he made a passive-aggressive comment about how some people prioritize money over family. It was subtle enough that most people didn't catch the context, but I knew it was directed at me. I stayed quiet and didn't respond. There was no way I was going to let this blow up in front of everyone. I kept my focus on enjoying the food and making small talk with other guests. Still, the humiliation lingered. Ryan's toast had been a low blow, and I could feel the judgment from a few family members who clearly sided with him. After the wedding, Ryan made one last-ditch effort to guilt-trip me into dropping the case. He called and said the court proceedings were ruining his honeymoon plans. He tried to frame it as me being vindictive and petty, asking how I could do this to him during such a happy time. I held firm. I reminded him that he had every opportunity to resolve this months ago, and he chose not to. I posted another update on Reddit, thanking everyone for their support. The comments were overwhelmingly positive, with many users commending me for staying calm and not stooping to Ryan's level. Some people shared similar stories of family drama and how they wished they'd stood up for themselves. It was reassuring to know I wasn't alone in dealing with situations like this. The court date is fast approaching, and I'm gathering everything I need to present my case. While the wedding is over, the fallout is far from settled. I know Ryan won't let this go quietly, but I'm prepared to see it through. This has gone beyond just the laptop. It's about showing that actions have consequences, even within a family. For now, I'm staying focused and letting the legal process take its course. Update 5. The small claims court date finally arrived. I showed up early, armed with all the evidence I had meticulously gathered, the original purchase receipt for the laptop, repair estimates, screenshots of conversations with Ryan, and photos of the damage. Ryan walked in 10 minutes late, looking irritated but otherwise composed. Jessica wasn't with him, which surprised me. When it was time for the case to be heard, Ryan wasted no time trying to downplay the situation. He argued that the laptop was old and barely worth anything. He even implied that I was exaggerating the damage and questioned why I hadn't just upgraded to something newer by now. The judge listened patiently but didn't seem particularly swayed. When it was my turn, I presented everything. I explained how the laptop was essential for my work and outlined how Ryan's delays had caused significant financial setbacks. I handed over the receipts, repair estimates, and screenshots. The judge flipped through the documents, occasionally nodding. Ryan's argument about the laptop being old fell apart quickly when I provided proof of its original purchase price and its remaining warranty period at the time of the damage. After both sides presented their cases, the judge deliberated for a few minutes before delivering the verdict. He ruled in my favor, ordering Ryan to pay the full amount within 30 days. Ryan's face turned bright red. He muttered something under his breath before storming out of the courtroom, without so much as a glance in my direction. I stayed behind to finalize the paperwork, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Over the next week, Ryan was completely silent. Then, out of nowhere, I received a bank transfer for the exact amount the court had ordered, accompanied by a sarcastic message, "Hope you're happy now." It wasn't much of an olive branch, but at least the matter was finally resolved. With the money, I bought a new laptop and used the remaining amount to pay off some lingering debts that had piled up during the months without reliable equipment. It felt good to finally move forward, though the whole ordeal left a sour taste. Family dynamics remained tense. My parents, while relieved that the case was over, subtly pressured me to reconcile with Ryan. They would bring him up in casual conversation, hinting that I should let bygones be bygones for the sake of family unity. Ryan, on the other hand, made no effort to apologize or repair the relationship. Instead, he doubled down on portraying me as the bad guy. I heard through mutual friends and family members that he was telling people I'd gone to extreme lengths to embarrass him and ruin his wedding. Over time, though, the cracks in his narrative started to show. Extended family members began to see through his behavior. A few even reached out to me privately to express their support, saying they understood why I had taken things as far as I did. One cousin mentioned how Ryan had borrowed money from him in the past and never paid it back, so this wasn't exactly new behavior. I posted a final update on Reddit, sharing the resolution and thanking everyone for their advice and support throughout the ordeal. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many users congratulating me for standing my ground. A few people shared their own stories of family drama, and reading through those made me feel less alone. A week after the court decision, Jessica reached out. She apologized for her role in escalating tensions and admitted that Ryan could be difficult. She said she regretted how things had played out and hoped we could find a way to move forward someday. I appreciated her reaching out, but it didn't change much. I took some time to reflect on whether I wanted to rebuild my relationship with Ryan. In the end, I decided to prioritize my own boundaries and well-being. Reconciliation would only work if both parties were willing to meet halfway, and Ryan had shown no interest in doing so. This experience taught me a lot. It wasn't just about the money, it was about respect and accountability. For years, I had let Ryan's behavior slide, thinking it was easier to keep the peace. But letting things go only enabled him to take advantage of me. Standing up for myself was hard, especially when it caused so much friction within the family, but it was the right thing to do. I ended my Reddit post with a lesson I learned through all of this. Family doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Sometimes, standing up for yourself is the best way to show love, not just for yourself, but for the people around you. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges that help define what healthy relationships should look like. For now, I'm focusing on moving forward. The family dynamic might take time to heal, but I'm at peace knowing I handled this the best way I could.